Thanks for joining me today. I've got a tale to share that's been simmering in my thoughts for quite some time. To be honest, it springs from a question that's always puzzled me, one that creeps up whenever I hear about relationships falling apart. Why do so many folks leave a window open for their exes even after the romance has ended? Really consider it. Isn't the essence of a breakup about severing ties completely? Yet, it feels like countless people allow their former partners to hover in the shadows, sending texts, making calls, or even meeting up as if nothing's changed. Am I just old-fashioned for believing that once it's done, it should truly be done? Maybe I'm built differently. To me, maintaining that sort of connection feels wrong. Like claiming you've moved forward while secretly clinging to the past. This brings me to the story I want to tell. One about how things began to crumble between me and my fiancée, Sarah. It's a tale that made me confront that question from a deeply personal perspective. Let's start at the beginning. Sarah and I go way back, long before we ever became a couple. Years ago, she was trapped in a toxic relationship with a guy who, to put it mildly, was trouble. I'll call him Mark, though that's not his real name. He was the type who kept you on edge, screaming one moment, icy and withdrawn the next. Sometimes it went beyond that, into darker territory. I witnessed the toll it took on her, though I stayed out of it, never trying to swoop in or play the savior. I knew she had to make her own choice to leave, and eventually she did. It was ugly, it was painful, but she broke free. When she walked away, you could see the weight of it in her eyes. Haunted, fragile, like she'd lost a piece of herself. I was there for her, not with any romantic intentions, just as a steady presence she could rely on. Months later, when she'd started to regain her strength, I asked her out. To my surprise, she agreed. Our connection grew quickly, maybe because we'd already built a foundation of trust, or perhaps because we both knew what we didn't want in a relationship. We fell deeply in love. Within 18 months, we were engaged. It felt like the natural progression of things. We moved in together, since we were practically inseparable anyway. Those early days of sharing a home were some of the happiest I've ever known. We'd cook dinners together, binge shows late into the night, take evening strolls through the neighborhood. It all felt so solid, so real. I truly believed we were crafting something that would last. But as you might have guessed, the bliss didn't hold. It started on an ordinary evening. I couldn't find my phone, checked the kitchen counter, under the sofa, behind the cushions, all the usual places. No luck. So I picked up Sarah's phone to call mine and track it down. A simple move, nothing more. But when I opened her call log, something caught my eye. Mark's name, right there in her recent calls, from just a few days ago. It hit me like a blow to the chest. This wasn't just an old contact lingering in her phone. They'd been talking. Hoping I was mistaken, I checked their messages, praying for a logical explanation. But there it was, texts back and forth, casual and familiar, like they were old buddies. It didn't add up, not after everything she'd told me about him, about the pain he'd caused. I walked into the bedroom where she was resting and asked her directly, "Why are you still in touch with him?" She froze, clearly caught off guard, but she didn't deny it. She called it harmless, just casual chatter. He'd reached out, she said, checking in. I told her how it made me feel. Uneasy, betrayed, like a boundary had been crossed. She'd sworn he was out of her life, that his actions were unforgivable. She looked at me and said, "If it bothers you, I'll stop talking to him. I don't want this to drive a wedge between us." Her words eased my mind a bit. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was just a momentary lapse. I thought things could go back to normal. But they didn't. Over the next few weeks, I noticed subtle shifts. Sarah, who'd always been casual about her phone, suddenly guarded it like a treasure. It never left her side, not when she showered, not when she folded laundry. If she stepped into another room, the phone went with her. At first, I tried to dismiss it. People are attached to their phones, right? But something felt off. The vibe between us had changed. I didn't want to turn into someone who snoops or doubts, but the signs were hard to ignore. So one day, I did something out of character. I went home during my lunch break, unannounced, to grab a hard drive I'd forgotten. That morning, I'd left earlier than usual for work, needing the drive for a meeting later. Normally, I'd call Sarah to let her know I was stopping by, just as a courtesy. But that day I didn't. I figured I'd slip in, grab the drive, and head out. No big deal. I found the drive and was almost out the door when I decided to grab a coffee from a nearby cafe we loved. I drove over, parked, walked in, gave a nod to the barista, and ordered my usual. Coffee in hand, I turned to leave. And that's when I saw them. Sarah, sitting in a corner booth with Mark. They were deep in conversation, oblivious to me. I stood there, watching for a moment, before walking to their table. I looked at her and said, "Don't come back to the house." Her face went blank, like she couldn't process my words. Her mouth parted, but nothing came out. I didn't wait for her to explain. I turned, walked out, got in my car, and drove away. The rest of that day is a blur. I was there, but my mind was elsewhere. That evening, when I got home, Sarah was already there, waiting. The second she saw me, she stood and launched into an explanation. Mark was struggling with something personal, she said, and had reached out for support. She insisted it was innocent, that she was just being kind, that it wasn't what it looked like. She framed it as some noble act, like I should admire her for helping someone she'd claimed to be done with. I let her talk, didn't cut her off. When she finished, I asked the one question that mattered. "Didn't you promise you'd cut him off?" She hesitated, just a beat, but it was enough. That pause spoke louder than any excuse. Before she could respond, I asked again, "So why were you with him?" She stumbled over her words, grasping for another justification. I didn't need to hear it. I didn't want to. To me, it was clear. In a committed relationship, you don't leave emotional doors ajar for someone else. That's not devotion, it's keeping your options open. I told her plainly, if she wasn't over him, I couldn't keep pouring myself into someone whose heart might still be elsewhere. Her expression twisted, like she couldn't believe I'd said it. But she understood. She just didn't expect me to call it out. I told her, if he means that much to you, go be with him. She broke down, tears streaming, insisting she never meant to hurt me, that she couldn't explain it, begging me not to walk away. But I was done. My heart had already checked out. I told her to pack her things and leave. I wasn't going to fight for a place I thought I'd already secured. She stood there, crying, hoping I'd soften, but I didn't. When she saw I meant every word, she gathered a few bags and left for her parents' place. I think she believed it was temporary, that I'd cool off and we'd work it out. But she didn't realize I wasn't acting out of anger. I was responding to the choice she'd already made by meeting him again. I waited a couple of days, expecting her to come back for the rest of her stuff, to at least handle it maturely. But nothing. So I decided to end it on my terms. I called her and asked her to come by. I think she thought this was me coming around, ready to talk. But when she arrived and saw her belongings packed and waiting by the door, it hit her. This was over. She called me after, but I didn't pick up. There was nothing more to say. Then the messages started, first pleading, then furious. She tried to wound me, calling me insecure, controlling, incapable of handling a strong woman. Her final shot, Mark was better than me. I read them but didn't respond. I sent one reply. Go be with him. And that was it. No more calls, no more fights, just quiet. In the aftermath, I had time to sit with my thoughts, reflecting not just on Sarah but on everything. I felt two things at once. Grief and release. Grief because I'd wanted it to work. I was all in, picturing a life together. But also release, because I finally saw the truth, not the version I'd hoped for. Looking back, I learned a few things. Lessons I think anyone in a relationship should hold close. First, trust is the foundation. Once it's cracked, you can try to mend it, but it's like gluing a broken mirror. You'll always see the fractures, and they'll keep cutting you. Second, set your lines early. If something feels wrong, speak up. Don't wait, hoping love will sort it out. I should have drawn a hard line the moment I saw those texts. Instead, I gave her room, thinking she'd choose me. That was my mistake. Third, actions outweigh words. Anyone can make promises. What matters is what they do. She said she'd cut him off, but she didn't. That told me everything. Fourth, emotional freedom is essential. You can't build a future with someone chained to their past. It's like running a race with someone tugging at your leg. You'll never get far. And finally, Sometimes walking away is all you've got left. It's painful, sure, but staying in something broken, hoping it'll fix itself, hurts more. I didn't want to let go, but I wasn't about to lose myself holding on to someone who wasn't holding on to me the same way. That's my story. If you were in my place, what would you have done? Was I right to walk away, or should I have given her another shot? I'd love to hear your perspective, because relationships come down to choices. You choose to trust. You choose to guard that trust. And when someone chooses to break it, sometimes the only choice left is to let go.